One of my goals when I came for my internship at Hopkins was I'm just going to talk to as many people as I can to figure out how they got a job here. Like, how do you get into science writing as a career?
Mhm.
And like, there's no straight path. Like, everybody's just kind of like, oh, I was doing this. And then somebody asked me to do that. And now I'm here.
So many of you may know that my time at Johns Hopkins was one of the most pivotal points in my life. It was not the job that I dreamed of, but it was a job that I needed. And during that time, I was blessed to work with a bunch of great people whom I still call family to this day. Today's guest is one of my good friends who started around the same time I did, and that is the one and only Miss Rachel Butch. Rachel is one of the prominent reasons that I can call myself a two-time award-winning producer. We worked on several projects together, including, in case you missed it, where she served as the host. And I have to say, it was an amazing thing to watch her transition from not only a science writer, but a science broadcaster as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, get ready as Rachel and I take a trip back down memory lane, and she gives you a better understanding of science communications. Here is my conversation with Rachel Butch. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, on the line today, I have one of my favorite people, one of my favorite colleagues in the past, somebody who I can truly say helped change my career, helped me in a time when things was difficult. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. That is the one, the only Miss Rachel Butch. Rachel, how are you doing today?
Hey, Brian, I'm doing great. I'm so excited to get to see you and talk to you.
Man, this has been a long time coming, so it's funny story. I had a list when I first started this in 2019. I don't know if I ever told you how the idea came about,
Mm-mm.
but it was doing one of those Hopkins trips. Me and Marin, who will be on here soon, we're just trying to figure out the time. But me and Marin was in Atlanta. So I want to say that was thoracic surgeon. I might be wrong though. But we were there and we were talking about just podcasting in general. And I said, this was during a walk to the convention. And I said, I want to do a podcast where I showcase all of my friends. I want to talk about their career journeys. So a part of planning, because that's what we always had to do. We always had to write a plan for things, which I've, been taking that into other walks of life. So I wrote out a plan for everything and you were on the list. So it's just, I'm glad we finally able to do this.
I like that your podcast idea was like, I want to make an excuse to make appointments to talk to my friends.
Yeah, it's been cool because I've been able to catch up with a lot of people, whether it be on air or even after the show is over
Mm.
or beforehand. So it's pretty cool. But everything's going well.
Things are good. I mean, it's been a nuts year. We like bought a house. I moved around jobs. So it's like coming back out of the pandemic with a lot of speed behind me.
Yeah, talk about it. Well, let's get started. I always say that you are one of the smartest people I know. Um, no, yeah, you have to own it now. I said it on
Okay.
air,
You said
and
it's on the it's on the record now.
it's on the record. It's
It's
on the internet.
terrifying.
So but what made you? When did your love for science start?
Oh my gosh. When I started, like, as a human being. I mean,
Mhm.
like, I think I was always the science kid. My parents are physical therapists, so one of the stories I tell is growing up that I had a favorite bone. It was the
Mhm.
patella, which is your kneecap.
Okay.
So that was among my first words was anatomy. So yeah, I've always been the science kid, always had pets, always really interested in animals. My family thought I was gonna be a vet growing up, which I like pursued a little bit. I checked it out and it wasn't right. But once I got into like the science communication field, that wasn't until I got into like college.
Mhm.
And I really, I mean, like I was a bio major. So I thought I was going to grad school and I was gonna do some sort of microbiology thing. And I picked up this certificate program they had at Pitt, and it was public and professional writing. And I was like, grad schools are going to love that if I can write. Because I don't like have, I don't know. I was talking to a bunch of people at this meeting this past weekend, and I was like, they all love writing so much. And like, maybe, I don't know, are we gonna cut this? Don't tell Vanessa. I don't love writing all that much. I love doing like the science communication stuff, but I don't like sitting down at a blank sheet of paper.
Mhm.
So I picked it up and I was like, okay, like I've always been good at writing. It's something that I can do pretty easily on my own. Um, and ended up doing all of my projects for that certificate program around my lab research. So that was just like a boot camp in science communication for me. And I got to the end and I'm like, not that good at my bio classes. I'm not that good at math. My advisor was like, what you gonna do? Because you're having a hard time, girly. And she goes, you should check out Sci-Comm. And she said that like one word to me, and it was off to the races because I didn't know it existed at all. And I was like, oh, this is perfect.
What
So
why is that a lot of people do not know about science communications?
I I don't know. I think for me, it like got lumped into journalism. And also
Okay.
there's this huge dichotomy between your science training and a communications training. I mean, culturally, the courses you take, it's so different. And if you're going to go and be a doctor, if you're going to go and be a researcher, you're laser focused whenever you're
Mm.
in those courses. So it's just like culture shift. I'm sorry.
'Cause,
Total culture shift.
yeah, because like, when I got to Johns Hopkins and I was, essentially brought there just to get the boot camp going.
Okay.
And then but the agency that placed me there told me that it was really to do event planning and a lot of social media. So, like, that's how I ended up there, and I was
Mhm.
like, "All right, well, I'm fresh out of ESPN off of the way they did social media." I'm like, "All right, cool, I can do this." But then I learned, like, the way the writing is different. But I had never seen this in school. So you imagine me telling my friends and people in my journalism circles that I work with science writers, and they're like, "Huh? What does that
Exactly.
mean?" So, I always wondered, like, why isn't because it could essentially be a major within itself, if I'm not mistaken.
And more places are opening that up. Like, when
Mhm,
I was at Pitt my last year there, they opened up one science writing course. And I think since then, programs have really exploded. I'm seeing more and more students from, actual science writing programs at places like AAAS. So it's growing. People are, especially now
mm,
after COVID, I think people understand how important science communication is more than ever. But
mhm,
it never, I don't know, my impression is it, like, wasn't really its own thing.
yeah,
Um, my one of my goals when I came for my internship at Hopkins was, I'm just gonna talk to as many people as I can to figure out how they got a job here. Like, how do you get into science writing as a career?
mhm.
And, like, there's no straight path. Like, everybody's just kinda like, "Oh, I was doing this, and then somebody asked me to do that, and now I'm here."
No,
So
facts.
yeah, a lot of scientists turned writers, a lot of writers turned science enthusiasts, so it's wild out here.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because that was my goal, like, my original goal was network with the video team or the social media team.
Mhm.
And hope to get a job. And shout out to Shauna because she was building those connections for me. Like she would introduce me to those teams because she knew that I would never be like a science writer. I mean,
Oh, I wouldn't have been in there without Shauna either, so
yeah, we all know the story. Audrey failed me. Or excuse me, I failed Audrey's class in 11th grade.
it was
Uh,
Audrey's fault.
right, which I had no business taking. But so and I was having a hard time. And it's funny now because I can do it. Shout out to you. But when you remember the tomorrows for discovery videos.
Mhm.
So when I started, I would be given like 8 YouTube links. and told to write the YouTube description, like a YouTube description, a tweet, and a Facebook post. Do you realize that took me 7 to 8 hours just to do that? Like, I would try to watch the video, figure out what they were saying, translate it, and it was a struggle.
It's not
Now
easy.
right, now I could do it, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But that comes with working with you and Vanessa and Chanapa because y'all really, like, translated the science where I could understand, you know what I mean?
And I
But
remember coming in and I was like, working on my first press releases and stuff, and I was like, "Brian, you gotta read this. Does this make sense to you?" And you're like, "I don't know. I don't know science." And I'm like, "That's why I'm asking you, sir. If it doesn't
right,
make sense to you, it's not working."
yeah, and I remember when, Andrew Golden came in, and he was like, "Man, what is this?" Because, he didn't even wanna be there. We
I
talked
know, he
about
was like, "My mom made me show up to this."
exactly, and we talked about that on his episode, how our team really made it fun for him, and then he was like, it made him step out of his comfort zone. Uh, but, you talked about University of Pittsburgh. What made
Mhm.
you choose that, for school?
Oh my gosh, well, I'm local,
Mhm,
so it what did make me choose Pitt for school besides just living in Pittsburgh? But I think I got in my head that I wanted to go somewhere that was really academically accoladed is the wrong word, but, pretty well known for their science programs. And all the
mhm,
other schools I went to, like, didn't really have those kind of chops
right.
that Pitt being linked up with UPMC and having this whole history, um, really gave me. And I wanted the opportunities that it provided. I have been working in research laboratories since I was like 16 years old. And my first one was at Pitt. So I had, my relationship runs deep. My parents are Pitt grads. It's all over us.
That's awesome. Now, how did it make them feel when you chose it? Like, were they, like, super excited, and especially when you graduated?
My parents are, like, so nonchalant. They, like, try like, I think they were really my mom especially. My dad went there for a graduate program, but
Mhm.
my mom went for undergrad. All her siblings went for undergrad. My cousins went there. So she was, like, real happy to have me close to home, and I think she had the kinda same confidence in the program.
Cool. Now,
Yeah.
how did you find Johns Hopkins?
Oh my god. Well, that was part of the hitting the ground running thing.
Mhm,
So after figuring out that grad school wasn't gonna work for me, in a, biological study sense, I talked to my advisor, got that word Sci-Comm, and just, like, started Googling and started looking stuff up. One of the first things I did was start writing for the, like, medical news, magazine.
mhm.
It was run by students, so I was like, "I need writing chops if I'm gonna do this, so let's get some clips running." And I started emailing people who ran science writing programs.
Mhm.
So the first one of the first people I emailed was Rob Irian, who was really involved with the um, NASW travel fellowship at the time. And he was like, "You have to apply to this if you want to get in." We're like, it was perfect timing to the point where they were just finishing up accepting applications. And I got in, and they gave me some money to travel from Pittsburgh out to DC and go to AAAS and do the internship fair. And
Okay.
this is like a format, and I'm giving you the long story here, but this is the
No.
format of like you have a bunch of news desks lined up, so science is always there, Nat Geo was there, and Hopkins had their internship booth there, and it's like speed dating for science writing internships, and either, like, you go news, you go PIO kinda stuff, it's got a variety in there. So, you run through all like, for 5 hours, you're doing 5-minute interviews with people, and 2 of the people I talked to were Marin and Shauna, and I mean, it fit really well with what I wanted to do because I love science, I love talking about research, I didn't feel equipped to go chasing after stories, especially after having a really hard time figuring out how to do that with the news magazine.
Mhm.
Um, so it fit pretty perfectly. I had a whole binder of, like, clips, and I, like, flipped through them to show them stuff. It was very cute. But it seemed like it was a really, really good fit. So that's kind of, I ended up applying and getting into it. And that's how I got to Hopkins. It was a whirlwind.
Nah, it was so cool. And if I'm not mistaken, you and Reagan were interns together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and for me, because I was so new and I was working with Shauna and Kathy, but I wasn't really understanding like the science of it all, but it was
Mhm.
still like all about planning boot camp. And then, the story Bia comes and then my desk gets shifted. And then, and I was really supposed to be leaving, if you
Yeah.
remember. And you and Reagan got there. And then it just seemed like when the team really started like collaborating and becoming one, like I don't know how it was before, but it just seemed like, Audrey and Maren always did a great job of making sure like everybody knew what everybody was doing.
Well, you also like, you personally, because 'cause I'm glad you got moved over to my side of the office because, like, you made sure to get everybody together. You know what I mean? Like, you are the
Yeah.
people person of, "Okay, yeah," like, I don't know that I woulda talked to Reagan if
Mhm.
you had not been like, "Get over here."
Oh, but, because I can't sit still. It's weird now working at home, but people will tell you I can't sit still. So, I would get up, walk around the office, talk to people, especially when I, like, really started getting really cool with Lauren and Taylor. So, I would go over to
Mhm.
their side and talk to them, and, it was freedom. But, like, one of the things I noticed that when you started interning, again, hitting the ground running, it felt like every time I turned around, you had a book bag or a binder or something or folder or something. You was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm about to go interview this doctor. I'm about to go interview that doctor." And you was cranking out content like that.
They really aren't joking with that
Mm,
internship. It really is like that, and I think maybe mine more than others just because the team was in such a state of flux
mhm.
that I mean, I just remember McMains being like, "Oh, you're gonna write? Here's, like, 3 papers. Go
Yep.
ahead. I'll show you how to write a press release, and then I'm just gonna let you do it." So it was really cool. I mean, like, super intimidating coming in right out of undergrad. Like, Brian, I had decided that I was gonna do science writing, like, maybe 6 months before I met you. Like,
Wow.
that's the turnaround, right? So, I went to that conference in February. I was in Baltimore by May.
Yeah.
So it was real quick.
And we're not even talking about moving.
What
You
do you
had to
mean?
deal like life,
Oh,
moving, like
yeah. No, I, like, had to sublet my room in my house in Pittsburgh and, like, be like, bye, guys," like, graduation, 2 weeks later, I was in Baltimore.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Yeah, and then that was your brother had graduated the same time that year, right? Because I think you took a vacation. I remember there was a conversation we had, and
Yeah.
at the time I was thinking my temporary job was gonna end. And I said, "Well, Rachel, we'll keep in contact." And you was like, "You'll be here when I get back."
Yeah, I needed you to be there when I came back.
And
But
then,
yeah, so my internship was over, and I think that's when they were hiring me into the media rep position.
mhm.
And, like, it was, like, the end of the summer, you're like, "My contract's up, I'm gonna be outta here," and I was like, I'm gonna see you later, I can't not see you later."
It was scheduled to end June 19th. I remember that because that's my first Sierra's birthday. And the Audrey came to me around June 9th or 10th.
Okay.
And was like, "You wanna stay?" I'm like, can I say this too?" "Hell yeah."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Okay, cool. So we're working on this precision medicine thing, and I think you'll be perfect. You'll do the social media for that. But in the meantime, we'll find something for you to do." And I was like storing all the clips from the news on the whatever the iDrive, I think it was called.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that was fun to say the least. It was, but that was a fun summer too, because we got to do a lot of cool projects and we really got to create a lot too. But what was that transition like from internship to media rep?
It was intimidating.
Okay.
Because I was making a shift from basic sciences into clinical science too.
Mhm.
They moved me on to a handful of the clinical beats, and it's just a totally different ballgame. Um, Basic scientists, like the ones at least I was working with, were like super happy to chit chat with you about their work. And, I got to spend the time creating calm stuff around those without a whole ton of expectation.
Mhm.
And when I went to the clinical side, it was like, "Oh, we want reports on how many hits you're getting on each of your stories." And I was like, "I don't know how to do that yet."
Ooh.
So it was really tough and, like, justifying your performance, especially in a media setting is, like it's hard to do whenever you know how to do it, and
Mhm.
it was quite the learning curve. I was in Marin's office a lot being like, "They're asking for this. How do I do that?" But it was good. I mean, I got to meet, like, a lot of amazing people.
Mhm.
That's when I got linked up with, like, Pablo Selnick, who's doing
Yep.
all the stroke research. So, like, it's awesome stuff. It's just whenever you're providing patient care and you're doing comms for that, it's a lot different than when it's science for the sake of science and discovery.
Yeah, I had to work with Dr. Selnick before,
Yeah.
I left. So, like, the last year as the team was getting smaller, I was like,
Mhm.
"Okay, now you have to have a beat." Like, "Oh my gosh, I
Right?
can't write." And you can only bullshit so much. Like, I would so what I would do is I can say this now. I would find every excuse not to write, especially during the pandemic, right? We're virtual. So I would literally tell doctors and researchers, you have the worst science writer on the team in charge of your beat,
How dare
but
you?
you got the best video producer. So I think we can reach more people if we do a video. So I would just record Zoom videos and then, write social pieces and pitch them to my friends in the news.
But that works so well. Like,
Hmm.
I wish I could do that for everything because it's so effective. If you can get a person
Hmm.
talking about what they do,
Yeah.
it's so much more engaging than reading about it.
Yeah, and that was the thing, and speaking of talking, let's transition to one of the greatest projects ever known, in case you missed it.
Known to
So
the history of man and womankind.
exactly. If they only kept it going.
What up? It's your boy Blue Magic, owner of For Your Wear and one half of the Mixed Tag Show. Now, I know you've seen the announcements for some of your favorite podcasters and wrestlers. I've decided to expand my business to become a vendor so that people from the wrestling community have a better way to communicate with some of their favorites. So check out foryourwear.com and see if your favorite podcaster or wrestler has partnered up with me. If not, let them know that they should. Also, if you're looking for a vendor for your merchandise, reach out to me at Blue Magic Grind, spell how it sound on Twitter or Instagram, or at For Your Wear, FORURWEAR, on Twitter and on Instagram. Shout out to Brian H. Waters and Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. Their merchandise are already up, and they're one of the first one that's supported, so go support them. All right? Peace.
So was it 20 yeah, 2018, I think. Because it felt like it took forever for it to get launched,
Yeah,
which
it did.
so it was 2018. I remember sitting in there and you were talking about the breast cancer ducks.
Oh, man. That was such a
And
good one.
yeah, and I remember just sitting there and usually during the Monday meetings, I'm listening to figure out, okay, is there an opportunity to create social media content? Because like for me not to have liked science at all growing up, I really loved the job. And a lot of it was the people, but we found ways to be innovative,
Mhm.
especially when we didn't have people, handcuffing us. So when I saw like the social media team and the video team, everything was just so cookie cutter. They wanted to do things the same way over and over again. But Audrey and Marin's team, we always was like, nah, let's be different. And
Mhm.
I was remember you was talking about the breast cancer ducts, and you got like this super excitement about it. So it made me excited, like, okay, so wait, what happens? And one
'Cause it's
day,
cool. It's super cool.
but that's what you call a star because everybody can't make everything seem cool, right? But you were able to do that. And I know you humble, but I'm not when it comes to my friends. So I remember one day, and it was shortly after Prince died. It came like an alert came to my watch. It said, 5 things you may have missed from CNN.
Mhm.
Light bulb goes off. What if we do 5 things you may have missed from Johns Hopkins? And I was like, well, okay. So I don't know if you remember, like when I like honed the idea down. I ran to you, Rachel. I got this idea, and I think you'll be perfect. Because we had tried to do like a introduction to a press release via video. Me
Uh-huh.
and Lauren tried it, and we couldn't really like perfect it. So when I came with this idea, and you were like on board immediately, because I
Well,
was
it's
my
because like, I'm all over these, like, science recap videos too, so I was like, "Oh, did you see this one, and this one, and this
exactly.
one?"
That's what made it work. That's the thing that I really wanted people to take from this conversation. Like, sure, I may have had the idea, but because what made it magical was the fact that this is your lane and you were a fan and you were watching. It's like you would always talk about, especially when we would have like the science. I don't want to call it, I guess it's comedy. You remember when we would go to that one room? I didn't forgot all the names of this place, but
You're
what
terrible with the branding. What's going on here?
I know. Look, my world is all wrestling now. This is a nice break when I get to do this. But you remember the room on campus that we used to go to off of Wolf Street, and they would always have like a science guy come in or gal, and they would do
That is the
comedy.
preclinical teaching building, and that is a
Okay.
basic sciences building, and yeah, you're right, I also don't remember the title of that talk series,
But you
but
know
they
what
were
I'm talking
great.
about.
Mhm.
They were fun. Like again, I enjoyed it. But this is your lane. This is in your space. You know what I mean? So when you was able to like break it down, and then we obviously honed it down instead of in 5 stories or 3 stories. Because at
Yeah,
first my idea was just like read a sentence and then read read the title, one sentence from the
yeah.
press release, move on. And y'all, Rachel was like, well, nobody's gonna really understand that, Brian. Like, sure, you could do that, but we gotta give them some more. And it was real fun. But talk about like your transition because now you've gone from writer to broadcaster. And just talk about making that transition and how you felt when you saw like the response to the way people were picking up on it.
I think giving me the broadcaster credit's a little much, I was just a cute face you put in front of the camera.
Oh, please.
No, it was I mean, the number of people who asked let's just start within our department. The number of
Hmm.
people who asked us about that program, it was so cool to, see all the different avenues that people were interested in. I know the video team was some of the first to reach out, but, I had researchers who had seen it, and there was just all these different places that a format like that would fit into really well. And it was just really nice to I think especially because it took so long to launch and we did so much work to find that form we got a formula going, but we did
Hmm.
so much work to find that. And just having that payoff was so nice. It was so sweet, to see it, and then to have it also be effective for what our job is, right?
Hmm.
And to have it be a legitimate avenue to share research stories, was just beautiful. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, it was just it's so nice to see something you've worked so hard for be appreciated among your colleagues, but also impactful for what you're actually trying to do and are getting paid for.
Did you get your flu shot yet? If not, it's not too late to avoid those sick days. Hi, my name is Rachel Butch, and this is In Case You Missed It with Hopkins Med News. We're outside of the Johns Hopkins Outpatient Center, where Dr. Lisa Maragakis, an expert epidemiologist, is working to protect her patients against the flu. Though this flu season is predicted to be less severe, it's still important that you get the vaccine before you're exposed to the virus. Dr. Maragakis recommends that all of her patients 6 months and older get the shot. Speaking of vaccination, another group of our researchers found that some parents are still reluctant to get their children vaccinated against HPV. In a survey, they found that the top 2 reasons parents decided to skip the shot were 1, concerns about the vaccine safety, and 2, their physician just never recommended it. Dr. Anna Beavis and Dr. Ann Rossich believe that this puts the power to protect patients firmly into the physician's hands. If they make a strong recommendation to have a vaccine and reiterate its safety, they believe that more children can be protected against HPV. Recently, Johns Hopkins researchers published the results of a 4-year project aimed to improve the health of our East Baltimore neighbors. Here, residents have an average life expectancy that's 20 years shorter than in some of the city's wealthier areas. This project helped thousands of people avoid hospital readmissions And as a nice bonus, it saved Medicare and Medicaid $113 million. That's it for this week. For more information on research from Johns Hopkins Medicine, check out our newsroom on hopkinsmedicine.org and follow us on Twitter at HopkinsMedNews.
Yeah, and what was so cool was like the team we had assembled, right? I'll start from the beginning just with Bia, Chanapa, and Lauren because they were a part of like the planning process, and
Mhm.
they had moved on by the time we finally got it launched. But they were a part of the planning process. I remember going to Audrey with the idea, and I was just thinking we'll just find a place in the hospital or shoot like the
Yeah,
swing space. And Audrey was like, "No, you got to take it here. You got to take it there." And you know how Audrey would get when she's excited about something.
I
So
know.
that it makes you excited. And I always said like two things that she was doing. So I always compared her to Vince McMahon, right? And I would hear people talk about Vince McMahon and in the way of, I guess, uh, not the problematic side that's still come out recently. And I gotta be careful because every time we do the wrestling realm and we mention Vince's name, it's like the show starts to cut off.
Is
But this
this
is
a
all positive.
sports reference?
He's the owner of WWE. Well, the founder. He
I'm
used to
sorry,
be the
everyone. I don't know him.
owner. So just know in July he made my day at work like take a complete shift. But what we would do is like they always say you come to him and say what you come to him with the idea and he would make it better. Or if you say you don't want to do something, he would talk to you, and by the time you finished leaving the office, you would do exactly what he wanted you said you wouldn't do.
Okay, so if we're going back to the Audrey analogy, you'll leave her office and you'll think it's your idea.
Exactly.
Like like,
Exactly.
I would be like, "Oh, I don't think I can handle this," and I was like, "Oh, I've been doing this for 8 years." Like
How about it? I mean, she made me write a media pitch for what is it? Transplant day or something like that.
Okay,
And I was thinking, I can't do this. And it was good, but the penis transplant overshadowed. So I
that'll
didn't
do it, huh?
right. Oh, that was a day. But so when I brought to her the idea, in case you missed it, she said, "Well, take it over here." And we remember we was all like, "Are we really ready for that? Maybe we should need to just focus on getting the content and just doing it in one place." But sure enough, when we did that last pilot episode that never aired, but we did it right outside the dome, it
Yeah.
was pretty much perfect, and to see us go into different places, showing off the hospital, showing off Johns Hopkins, even to a point where people would say, "Hey, can you put this story in, or can you do this one?" And I remember when the first episode aired, to see my friends who are journalists really love it and love you. You know what I mean? And then it was to a point where, like, shout out to my friend Chanel. She was like, "I feel like I know Rachel. You remember when you cut your hair?"
Oh,
And then
yeah.
she was like, "Rachel cut her hair." That was the first thing she said. But it came to a point where like people were like really buying into and people were becoming a fan of yours. Now, how did that make you feel? I
So
know you always
weird.
kept an ego, but like especially the reason why I asked because like you never came into this intending to be on camera. You know what I mean? So like
No.
it's a whole different shift.
I mean, my mom was super pleased. She's like, "You're so cute. You're like, what are you gonna do being in a lab? You gotta go talk to people." Um, so yeah, that was very good for her, but I don't know. I don't feel like I have fans. Like I'm not on really on Twitter or anything. Um, I can like say it like reflecting on how I feel about the people on the video series and stuff I follow, where
Mhm.
like I do feel like they're my buddies.
Yeah.
So it's really fun to engage with that and do a little bit of it and just a little taste to say that I've done it.
I will say this, as a fan of yours, I had always wished that we could have eventually launched a science podcast with you and Vanessa.
I mean, that's not out of the question. I do you like, I will send you my Spotify Wrapped. It is all podcasts. I listened to
Okay.
just years worth I listened to years worth of podcasts, so I might as well do one.
Mhm,
Um, but yeah, I would be so down for that because it's, like, so fun to just sit and chat about cool research. I was at the kitchen table last night talking through this how cryo-EM works with Kevin, and I was like, "But
mm.
you can see it. You're not just, like, inferring where this molecule is. You're looking at it."
And that's the thing, like, for me, I'm from East Baltimore. We don't know nothing about science for the most part, you know. In like even in some of the areas we were recording in, and some of the times it might look a little sketchy but it was fitting because of the story we was talking about at the time about like the I want to call it like when things ain't balanced, right? The health equities. It was one
Mhm.
of the like the first ones we did. It was sort of like health equity esque, So being able to listen to somebody, and obviously, we're friends, so it's a difference, but also being able to say, hey, no, you need to check this out because this story as well. And it's the way you present it, right? And that's why I always, what made me a fan. And that's what made it so much fun to be able to do that. And it helped me personally, I'm thanking you publicly because you challenged me as far as the writing of it was concerned, is writing, even though it took me back to broadcast writing, but I still had to make sure the science made sense.
Mhm. And it's like it is so hard to go short with
Hmm.
science. I'm only taking it 2 steps from the 18-page academic paper, and to get that down, and I mean, what were we cutting stories at? Like a minute and a half?
Well, we had the Twitter time limit. If we was on YouTube, sure, we would have went longer, but we stayed it had to be under 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
Yeah, so we were doing a whole conclusions for a research paper in 3 sentences. That's not
Mhm.
easy to do, and to, like, figure out I mean, like, to figure out how to do that without the science background is amazing, so I will never stop saying how proud I am of you for, like, dude, like, you did it. You did it so well.
Thank you.
I'm still impressed for how quickly you turned around from being like, "It's science writing. I don't know what's happening," to, like, just turning out 3 sentences that were accurate enough for a video series. Like, damn. Am I allowed
Well,
to
and
swear on here?
yeah, absolutely. The thing that I enjoyed too was working with the writers, right? Shout out to Michael, shout out to Patrick, shout out to Vanessa. Um, I think I shout out everybody on the team in general. Who would I would write the stories and then say, "Hey, can you look over this?" And they would
Yeah.
help me hone it. And even with Michael, who was somebody who worked in broadcast before, he could always make it interesting and, just kind of help me. So, the team effort was what was amazing, you know what I mean? And being able to have that process. Once we got that process, we was
I
rolling.
know, man. I know. It was so fun because
Mhm.
we just would walk on and be like, "This is what we're doing. We got a
Ye-
teleprompter." We were like, "Good."
yeah,
I
and
didn't have to say it all in one go.
I remember that. Oh yeah, we did. But first we didn't have a teleprompter.
No, and I would memorize it or something.
Hmm.
I don't know.
No, you did, and you would get it done fairly quickly. You know what I mean? Um, and then even like working with Kristen, because Kristen was also just like me, a video major. So for
Yeah,
her to be able to come in and just kind of pick the ball up and get
I
going, and
know, and, like, we wouldn't have been able to do it without the people because
hmm
that was the important part, like, right? Like, you left, and I was like, I can't run in case you missed it by myself."
yeah, and even Archie with makeup.
Yeah,
you know, I remember she was like texting Audrey, and Audrey said something about contour, and I was like, see, this is why you
I
have to
did
have
contour a little bit today. I do
oh,
work for Archie now, so I have to
how cool is
keep the
that?
standards up. It's
Yeah.
wild.
But so what was some of like your favorite memories at Johns Hopkins, also like outside of in case you missed it?
Outside, I mean, obviously, in case you missed it, is, like,
Mm.
top tier. I think one of the oh, man, I don't know. It was all the people. I mean,
Mhm.
it really is. You guys are so incredible, and I learned everything I know from you guys. So, it was really, really amazing, to have had the opportunity to come in and do all of this. You should have prepared me beforehand. I could have thought of some things, but I can't think of, like, individual memories. My favorite stuff is just talking with the researchers, though. Besides
Mhm.
working with our team and making friends and having a fun time chatting about science with my buddies, um, it's working with the researchers and, like,
Mhm.
pulling that information out of them and being, like, just learning the coolest stuff in the whole world. It's so fun.
Yeah, and also you also got to do a lot of traveling from time to time as well,
Yeah.
which I thought was always, like, the coolest thing, you know, first was your first trip, where did we go? Durham? Was that your first trip as well?
Well, I was going to NASW and AAAS, so I don't know if
Okay.
that was my first one, but it was early.
Yeah, because I remember that was my first, and that's not including the Science Writers Boot Camp, obviously, but like first
Yeah.
overnight.
That's DC, that's not travel.
Yeah, we went for precision medicine conferences, but that was the cool thing too to really see the impact that we were making once we stepped out of the Hopkins bubble. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Or even network with other people. Cause like I know when I would go to some of the other conferences and show, you know, people in case you missed it, they were like, wow, this is really cool. More people should be doing stuff like this, you
Yeah.
know. But also just to see the doctors and the researchers in their element and see how excited they would get.
And that's why, I mean, I am so energized after being at AAAS this past weekend because it's all that.
Hmm.
It's just like people in their maybe the researchers aren't in their element because they're presenting, but it's, the science communicators are definitely in their element in those kind of environments, and it's awesome to catch up with people, see what kind of programs other groups are doing, and really like get to be part of the Sci-Comm community. I think
Hmm.
I was hurting for that uh, through the pandemic. The last science meeting I was at, last big meeting like that was AAAS in February in Seattle in 2020, right before everything shut down.
Yeah, I remember around that time we had went to that was the thoracic surgeons. When me and
Was it?
Marin went New Orleans, it was because we was down there when Kobe Bryant died. Marin can tell you the memory. I like she was literally like right next to me, and I'm breaking the news to her. And you know, everybody knows like that's my favorite basketball player. So, but then I think like when we got back, you had left or you was getting ready to leave and then come back. And I swear I could be wrong, but I swear we all had like some sort of mild version of COVID because we was all sick.
We came back and all were so sick. Oh,
Yeah. And
yeah.
so that was right before the Hopkins Med Live.
Oh my god. I was so sick. I was so sick during that. It was so
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. Oh man, Hopkins Med Live has so much potential.
That was fun. That
Yeah.
was fun. I like when you're talking okay, if you're gonna talk about broadcast stuff, like
Mhm.
that is I love that. I
Mhm.
love sitting down and like it's really tense, but you can, you've planned it out beforehand and you get to have those conversations. It was really cool.
No,
And
that's the
I
thing
love
too.
Oh, and I love the connections that we, like, made through that because, like, right, I'm on the basic sciences team. The only reason I was, like, involved is because I was already on camera.
Mhm.
Um, but I got to, like, talk with our cardiologists and, Lisa Cooper at the School of Public Health. So it was, like, awesome to see the other side of stuff.
Yeah, and one of the things that you did well was you made them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, you made them feel comfortable going on camera too, especially you being like, let's just say we get somebody from like national news. You don't know if they're gonna have like a hidden agenda or like, let me see if I can trip them up. You know, there was a sort of safety that you made the researchers and the doctors feel.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of working internally too. I mean, that's part of the appeal for me is where I can sit down and have conversations without having to have tactics.
Hmm.
Um, because one of the people in Hopkins Med Live was Naman J,
Hmm.
and she became one of our superstars during COVID. And I remember, like working with her on these interview tactics and how to be comfortable and confident on camera. And she's just so good at it. So good at it. And I think it's just that little bit of a nudge and, preparation from our side that can help folks really shine, right? If you give them permission and be like, I know you know this stuff, this is your life's work. Um, and I'm just going to give you some strategies so you can feel confident going in and talking to a reporter about these things. It's really, really rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what would you say that working at Johns Hopkins, so you did 6 years, right?
Yeah, ish, I think.
Yeah.
I was there
So
from 2016.
right, right. How would you say, like, that's helped you in the next phase of your career and your career goals?
Oh my gosh, Brian, we did so much. Man, like I learned so much, and that's
Mhm,
why I keep pushing people into that internship program. I'm still really engaged with I need to get back re-engaged after this last year with the um, NASW kind of like pipeline that they run up into the science writing internship because you learn so much working in that office. We handled so many different things like everything, social media, event planning, working with researchers, reading academic papers, doing the press, learning how to do media measurement. And I don't think you're going to get that in other offices, partially because they took advantage of our talents and had me doing a ton of different kinds of jobs. But it was a huge, huge learning experience. It was amazing.
yeah,
And I think I can
definitely.
only see that now that I'm out and I'm like, it's not the expectation anymore. So now
Mhm,
I can see the benefit of it where it was a
yeah.
lot of pressure. I mean, it's a lot of pressure to do all of that, but it's cool to know that I can.
Did you ever have a moment where you stood back and saw, like, how amazing things were?
I mean, I did that a lot. I'm
Okay.
not going to say only after I left. But I all like for the science stuff, I always think it's amazing.
Mhm.
So that's the core of it for me is to just be like, "Wow, you're doing this thing and you can tell me about it and I can like understand." Is the fun part. Like I think towards the end I went to this octopus program with Vanessa and Ayana and Gold Dolan was speaking there at the National Aquarium and I was like, "Man, you don't get to do this anywhere else. Like,
Mhm.
you don't get to have that kind of interaction, um, at other places. So, it's bittersweet to not be in it like that anymore, but I learned so much. It's helped me in my career so, so much that I can walk out and be, like, confident in my writing, confident in my storytelling. It means a lot.
Yeah, that's amazing. There was a time when we was at Audrey's house, and I just looked around, I said, "Wow, we have an all-star team here."
I know, I know.
And a lot of people, and I think too, for me personally, it was especially having worked at ESPN, which at the time was a dream job, and then afterwards was like, okay, this ain't a dream anymore. I'm ready to go back home. But to be like working with so many different people, we had one of the most diverse team, so we were all able to learn so much from each other.
Mhm.
And we had management that listened. They listened with open ears, and we was encouraged to, like, I used to hate having to present sometimes. Like, what do you mean I got to present? Can't I just do the work? But it pushed me to be able to really help people understand. And what a lot of times I saw was Audrey was making sure everybody understood that every member on our team was valuable. And I remember one time she said, "I don't hire if I don't think you can be a leader." And then I was like, wow, that makes sense because we all led a project in some way, shape,
Mhm.
or form, and that doesn't always happen.
I mean, yeah, even on the background, like, kinda corporate side of things, I feel, like, everything we did, whether management thought it was a good idea or
Mhm.
not a home run, you'd write a plan for it first. And that kind of preparation work and justification and measurement is really impactful. It's, really, really helpful when you're trying to move projects through
Mm.
anywhere.
Yeah. That was the first thing I did when I got the ringer, and I was told that the show that I was working on at the time was gonna be, like, my show, like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna be responsible for producing. I said, "Okay." And I took a day, I wrote a plan, I presented to my manager, I said, "So, this" oh, no, first I met with the talent, I think, the host, but I said, "I wanna know your vision," and I put it all together, I presented to my manager, he's like, "Wow," and then after my first trip You know what I did? A recap, a one-page recap on the how many podcasts we did, the the numbers and so in wrestling it's called the dirt sheets. So if you interview somebody and they give you a hot take and then it makes the headlines. So we call it the dirt sheets. So I put like all the stuff that went on the dirt sheets. And he was like, "Oh, wow, this is cool." And he ended up, presenting it to his manager. So,
And it's
but
so important, right? Because if you didn't write that up and give him an easy thing to share, then that
mhm,
next up higher level would have never heard about it.
yep.
It's like, make it easy for people to talk good about your work.
Mhm. But before we get out of here, I got to ask you this question.
Oh
The
boy.
question I ask everybody: when you look back over your career so far, and I know you've you're still going places, but so far, when you look back at your career, when was the moment that Rachel Butch broke through the glass ceiling? That moment when you realized, wow, like this is what I should be doing, and I'm pretty good at this.
Oh man. I think it's I think it was for Hopkins Med Live. Whenever we
Mm,
were doing all the prep work ahead of
mhm,
time,
mhm,
um, and pulling those types of stories and narratives out of the experts, right? And helping them organize their thoughts, like, that's what I like to do.
mhm,
Um, so that was one moment, and I guess that kind of applies out into the video project I did for COVID, which was just, like, quick and dirty interviews with people like our experts who were willing to talk about what was happening with coronavirus early on. Um, and I actually won't ever forget this. I was on one with Dr. G and just talking about, I don't even remember what the interview was. It was like maybe masking, maybe it was about viral spread, maybe it was about what we know about the genome. Who knows?
mhm,
And he was like, I was like coaching him through the process because it has to be this like quick little video and really, really succinct and clear for folks because it's going to be shared on social too. And he
mhm.
was like, I thought I was bugging him because I was going back in and I was like, okay, so like you said this, can you actually rephrase it this way so I can use it as a sound grab? Or like, oh, that's a really good point. Maybe we can relate that together with this other thing. And he just stopped and he was like, Rachel, you're really good at this. And I was like, and all I need is positive feedback. So, I mean, the both of those experiences where it like showed that this kind of like narrative training I was getting and being able to understand what these scientists are talking about and make it simple is what drove it home for me. I just love it.
Man, that's amazing. Shout out to Dr. G. I actually
Oh
just talked to
man.
him on Twitter today. Um, and so my mother went and saw him. Well, she went to that doctor and then she heard his voice because he was helping her through COVID. And but they had never met in person. And so she was
Okay.
like, "Excuse me, Dr. G." He was like, and so he's like, "Let's take a picture." So I'm like, this was like Monday, and he texted me, and there's the selfie of them too. So that was amazing.
Oh,
He
he's such a real one. I love him.
yeah, he was the first person I had to write a tip sheet for. And it was something COVID related. And I remember like, struggling. And he was like, "No, you got it. This is, you clean it up a little bit." But, again, that positive feedback. And you know how it is when you're working with researchers, you sometimes you don't know what you're gonna get. Let's call it for what it is. You might have somebody that's difficult, somebody that's easy to work with.
Mhm.
Like the urology team, they was I had good experiences, but everybody else didn't. So, but I was definitely, it was definitely always great working with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fun. Like, I am a public radio junkie, so I am listening in whenever he's on there. That like
Mhm.
the NPR hosts are calling him Dr. G after his formal introduction. I'm like, ah, man, he's great.
Facts, facts.
But
But
yeah, I like one thing to say though. I
mhm.
hope I'm not keeping you
No,
longer,
you're
but
good. This
like
this 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 your show. It's about you. So.
even with the difficult, like right, like as a right, let's go back to this divide between science and communications.
Mhm.
They don't really understand what we do, right? Unless you've already engaged with your comms office, I don't think that your average researcher is going to like value our work without some context because
Mhm.
they're trained to go up through the peer reviewed publication, presentations. That's what's important to their career kind of pathway. And that's
Mhm.
all that's pointed out to you as a researcher. So getting in there and like coming to some sort of common ground with folks is the most important part. So even whenever you're not seeing eye to eye with them, like my best experience was just explaining the fundamentals of what I do, why it's important for like how it can benefit them. Like, right, we're working towards the same goal here
Yeah.
and sincerely trying to understand their work. Cause I think, you know, this is what they do. And they're trusting you with saying things about it that they
Mhm.
don't necessarily get. So building that trust of being like, I'm going to take this little egg and I'm going to take care of it and we're going to do good things with this information. I'm not going to harm it is one of the most important parts.
And that's the thing I think people really need to understand. Um, and that's what you did a great job with when interns would come or new people would come, where you would help them understand, like, we're communicating their life's work to the public,
Yeah.
and that was always fun. It was always fun to watch, like seeing them on the news, especially if it was like an interview, like, oh yeah, I set that up,
Yeah. Yeah.
or watching them being right there while they were doing the interview. And I remember even being back to Dr. G the first time I met him, he was like, so Brian, was that good? Is this a good point? And it's like, because we're all in this together, you know what I mean? And this is important work. I tell people all the time, like people say, hey, I'm sorry, I forgot to send you this video. I'm like, dude, we're not doing brain surgery. This is podcasting. Oh, I
Yeah.
forgot to send you this audio. I'm so sorry. Like, it's not the end of the world. And I think because when I was at ESPN, it was a shout out to my guy, Mike Scalise. It was a time where we had to like make video cuts, quick cuts for Sports Center. And he said, hey man, and guess what? If we don't get it up in time, it's not a big deal. And it was just like that confidence, like, okay, because some people would yell. He's like, ain't nobody dying. We're not doing brain surgery. If the screen go black, no, we don't want it to happen. But if it do, so what? You know what I mean? But
It's so different after you work with the people who actually are doing brain surgery.
exactly. And then even communicating their work properly, because it could change their reputation. You know what I
Exactly. And
mean?
that's the scary part of handing it off. I had not the same experience, but, I worked in a research lab and had to hand off my work after I graduated. And it's so hard. You work
Hmm.
so hard on it that you want to make sure people get it right. So that's what
Exactly.
I want to do.
Absolutely. Well, Rachel, this was so much fun. It was so good catching up and, going back down memory lane.
I know.
Yeah,
It
but
was great. Thank you for having me on. I could like sit and talk here for another hour.
well, what do you want to talk about? um, but there is an addition. So I haven't done an episode yet, but I did announce at the 100th episode that we'll be breaking through glass ceilings with new projects. So when as you transition and keep moving forward in your career, we'll have to bring you back on for that one, so you can talk about more cool stuff that you're doing.
Oh, I'll keep notes on cool stuff I'm working on and make sure to bring it over to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. But let the people know where they can find you.
Oh man, don't find me. No, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm not as active on those platforms as I used to be, but definitely give me a shout out. And should I give them my work email? Like, do we want
Sh-
to say hi that way?
Sure, if you want.
Okay, so if you are a student and you want to get engaged with science writing and don't know how to start, email me, rachel.butch@utsouthwestern.edu. That is another one of my favorite things to talk about, so I'm happy to connect you up.
That is awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure y'all keep up to date with Rachel's work. She's the best person to talk science with, I promise you that. And I'm still rooting for that podcast to come, because I know Rachel's very good at communications in general. So throw a little bit of science on there and let's see what happens. But folks, that'll do it for this week's episode of Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. Remember, do not let anyone place a ceiling above your success. You can get Breaking Through Glass Ceilings t-shirts from foryourwear.com. Also, remember, you can go onto Symphony of Balloons and save 10% by just simply mentioning you heard about it right here on Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. So long, everybody. Thank you for listening to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. You can support this podcast by going on foryourwear.com personalities.com. Go to personalities and see Brian H. Waters. There you can get Breaking Through Glass Ceilings t-shirt or a hoodie, as well as a No Ceilings Above Success t-shirt. Go to foryourwear.com. Make sure you also check out some of the other podcasters and professional wrestlers as well.